Hello and welcome back to the Starting Story podcast with me, your host, Krishna Palmer. Here we talk to business entrepreneurs about their start in entrepreneurship and the story they've taken along the way to get them to where they are right now. Today, my guest is Sophie Biggerstaff. She is a business mentor, podcaster, and mental health advocate. She's transitioned from high-pressure career jobs in global fashion brands like Ralph Lauren and has become a freedom-focused entrepreneur. She experienced burnout and anxiety, and so pursued a path of building her e-commerce consultancy business, where she's now supported over 100 founders and has eventually become a mentor and course creator. She aims to help entrepreneurs redefine what success means to them, escape that dreaded hustle culture, and create businesses that align with their desired lifestyle. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's speak now with Sophie Biggerstaff and find out more about her starting story. Sophie, thank you so much for coming on to the Starting Story podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here. Do you want to give a quick kind of introduction to kind of what you're doing and who you are,
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak to me and inviting me on. I'm Sophie. I am an online business mentor and course creator. And essentially, I came out of a very intense corporate life career in the fashion industry. I worked my way up as a fashion buyer for about 11 years. I was working for some very big global fashion brands, including Ralph Lauren, Diesel, Kate Spade and Burberry, and then eventually got very sick of corporate world, corporate politics, the 9-to-5 hustle culture, and decided to kind of pack all of that in and create my own online business. I don't think I intended to start a business, honestly, as I was building. It wasn't my intention, in all honesty. I just kind of naturally accidentally fell into that because I ended up quitting my job at the beginning of the pandemic. And in fashion, as we know, in the pandemic, most of the stores were shut. So there were no jobs for me to go back to. I actually intended to go traveling. There was no flights out of the country. So I got stuck in London and I ended up just starting a business whilst we were in lockdown, basically. And that business materialized into being an e-commerce consultancy. And then I realized that everybody that I was speaking to had the same problem and I was able to help them solve it. So I essentially packaged up quite a lot of my knowledge and put that into online courses and started selling those. So essentially I decided to venture into so many different online business models, test them all. And where I'm at today is actually helping people that were in my shoes 5 years ago, trying to start an online business, trying to do something for themselves. Maybe didn't quite know what the goal was, the end goal, but they knew they wanted more. They wanted more than the 9-to-5. And now I'm working with founders on a one-on-one basis, a group basis, and a course basis to help them figure out how to live a life that involves more freedom and set up an online business that helps them achieve that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpick there, but I think kind of one of the things that I saw was different was the fact you just said you kind of had to start a business because of the circumstances of COVID. You can't get a job. You can't even, they say either work or play. You couldn't work and you couldn't play. You were just kind of stuck in the middle ground, weren't you? So whereas quite a lot of people say, oh, I pursued my dreams and I started a business, yours was like, that was the only thing I could really do at that time apart from just sit and do nothing. But even before then, I wanted to ask, kind of in these jobs with these, high profile fashion brands, what were you doing? Because obviously people say they can work with these companies, but that could be pretty low level work, whereas you were doing pretty high level work. So what exactly was that? And then how did those skills kind of transfer and help you into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so I was in the buying department for these stores. So if you know what a buyer is, it's essentially the person that decides all of the products that's actually going to end up in the stores. I would do all of the financial planning. I would determine how many units we're going to buy into those stores. So if you think about going into a Burberry store, I had decided every single piece of that one, my department's piece was going to be in that store and how many units were going to be in those stores and how many sales we were projected to make on those stores. So I was working on quite high level strategy. I'd done that for a very long time, so I'd worked my way up. By the time I left, I was the buying manager for Burberry. I was managing a £380 million business. I was working on 5-year top level plans for the company, going to board meetings. It was quite an intense job. And I also, previous to that, I had essentially worked for Kate Spade, and Kate Spade were very well established in the US, but they weren't very established in Europe. So I'd helped them establish themselves in the UK market. So I'd had a bit of a taste of like what a startup life looked like from that job. And I realized as I was at Burberry, I was making these 5-year plans, all of this sales analysis for this £380 million business. I was like, well, if I'm doing it for this £380 million business, I can do this for startups, which is where more I was enjoying that journey when I was at Kate Spade. So I just started to realize, oh, I've got all of these skills. These are all the things that I enjoy about my job. I could probably do this for other people. If Burberry need this, then smaller businesses probably need this as well. And that's where that idea kind of came from for my own consultancy, essentially.
Yeah. So would you kind of agree with the kind of the way other people think, which is that it can be more fun and rewarding to set up a smaller business, even though it's riskier, than to keep a big established business going?
I think there's so many complexities, obviously, that come with like being a bigger business. For example, obviously, Burberry is listed on the stock market. Like every single action that I took in my department, I had to think about the share price. So it's very like intricate in the details, and obviously, you need a lot of resource to run a huge 380, well, it's more than 300 million pounds, but my department was 380 million pounds. That's just a little drop in the ocean of like the actual bigger business. But yeah, like I think as soon as you start adding extra layers onto your business, more people into the business, there's more opinions, there's more things happening, it's way less fun and enjoyable because there's just so many layers. So yeah, I personally would say that keeping a business slightly smaller can be more rewarding, I'd say.
Okay, and I've heard that from multiple guests in the past as well, where they've said, you know, people kind of similar to you, where they'll kind of go really high level in a job or really high level in the business, for example, but then kind of their next venture will be, I want to help the small guys out because it's just a lot more fun, and you don't feel like you're stuck in the same thing every single day, because otherwise the years just fly past, don't they, if you're stuck in the same loop. So then, when you said you kind of had to start this business back in 2020. Do you want to walk through a bit more of kind of your exact thoughts at that moment? Kind of you're stuck, you've quit your job, you can't travel, you're literally stuck in the UK. Where did your mind go that led you to going, maybe I can start and help other people?
Yeah, definitely. So before I'd even left my job at Burberry, I had considered maybe I could start something when I come back from my travels. That was kind of the thought. Like I wanted to go traveling around Latin America. I'd done all of Southeast Asia. I'd been traveling. I started traveling when I was 21 and kind of had that travel bug. I'd never really stopped. So whenever I had the opportunity, I always wanted to travel. So when I quit my job, because I just simply had enough of corporate, there were two options. One was, right, okay, we go traveling and then maybe we'll just figure it out afterwards. Like that's normally what happens. Or we could just come back and go and work for another retail company. Because I know that I've got that skill set. I know I was very employable at the time. So it would have been easy to do that. But then obviously we went into the pandemic. I'm literally stuck in my flat in London with a mortgage to pay. I've already quit my job. I can't go and chase them back because they weren't hiring anymore. The companies that were actually just getting rid of people more so than hiring. And I was like looking at my industry just crumbling because the fashion industry didn't really, unless you had an e-commerce business that was really well set up to target people more remotely, then the fashion industry was struggling. So I kind of knew straight away that there weren't going to be opportunities for me to go back.
Right.
But I didn't necessarily think, I didn't really know what I was going to do, honestly. It was very much like, let's just try a few different things. And actually the first ever business that I started in that period of time, I started just before I left Burberry, but I had this vision that I wanted to help students get into fashion jobs.
Okay.
But obviously, so I started like helping them with their CVs. I created all of these like little mini subgroups. I was doing lectures at universities to try and get people into my world. But I very quickly realized that students don't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
So in terms of actually making that a business, it wasn't really going to go anywhere. So I started doing that just on like as a side project, little hobby. And at the same time, I was like, right, what else can I do? Maybe I could do some freelance work. I don't even know where the word freelance or like the role of a freelancer came into my vision, but somehow I was like, let's do some freelance work. So actually, I didn't really intend to start a business with that. It was just like, I just need to make some money in the meantime.
Yeah.
So I turned my LinkedIn profile into a freelance portfolio. And very quickly, luckily because of the brands that I'd worked with, I was getting contacted to support people, because so many new e-commerce businesses were being founded at that time that they really did need the help. So I jumped into their business on a freelance basis. And then it wasn't until maybe like 4 or 5 months after of doing freelance work that I realized all of the people that were coming to me had the same problem. And then that's where I was like, boom, I can start a business with this. And then I just kind of like ran with it from there.
Wow. Okay. So it's proper journey you've taken there, and it's so true. You kind of, when you're at the start, you just don't really know what's going on. You're trying to just take it step by step, right? And so you were initially thinking helping students, and rightly so, students do not have money. At least not money to just spend away like you would on, on fashion and stuff. So when you realized that you wanted to help smaller fashion creators, where did that kind of energy go towards? Because fashion can be split towards e-commerce. It could be actual like brick and mortar fashion, or something a bit more like niche compared to those two. Where did your energy go towards?
Yeah, well, naturally, there were no brick and mortar stores open at that time because we were still in lockdown. So it went to e-commerce, and I was naturally just being approached by e-commerce founders. So although like a lot of my experience had actually been in like the retail side of things, but it was very transferable into like the online world, and I'd done my own things in the online space previously. So I kind of had quite a lot of knowledge to support those with. So it went pretty much with the e-commerce. It started out as like support in already kind of businesses that were maybe like 1 or 2 years down the line of their journey, and they'd set it up, it had grown really fast and they didn't really know what to do next. I had a few people come to me that were like very early on in their e-commerce journey and they had no idea how to set up a business. Like I helped launch a whole e-commerce marketplace for children's wear, which we got like 12 to 15 luxury fashion brands through my contacts stocking onto their platform.
Oh.
So it was like I had all of these skills, these contacts, and it just made sense to go down the e-commerce path.
Okay, so for people that don't understand, like me, kind of what things are needed in a luxury brand, do you want to kind of explain a little bit more, all the way from not only the stock, but like you said, something that can be missed, how you're gonna get those kind of good, the good brands in, because there's no point if you've got an entire store but there's nothing that's gonna draw people in. What's the kind of thought process behind setting it up?
Yeah, I guess it depends on your business model, right? Like there's different ways you can do it. I've worked with direct-to-consumer brands. I've also worked with wholesale brands, and I've also worked with platforms that sell other people's brands. So in the specific example of like that luxury brand where we got her brands to stock on her website, she wanted to set up a children's wear e-commerce platform which had like multiple brands on there. So in order for us to do that, and we needed to approach the luxury brand to say, would you allow us to stock your product on my brand new platform that doesn't exist? I've got no data behind it to tell you it's going to work, but will you come and list on my website? So that process in itself is very interesting, because obviously you have a platform that nobody's ever heard of before, and then you're pitching it to people that don't know who you are, but you're expecting them to want to sell on this platform. So the way you have to position yourself is like you're selling to them a platform that you have no idea if it's going to work or not. Like you're just kind of like going in with blind faith and asking them to list their product. And I think a mixture of the pitch that we put together, the case behind the business, that there wasn't really that many things out there on the market like it, and the contacts that we had, was the success of that project. But obviously then once you get the brands, you then have to think about actually buying the stock from the brand. So there's one thing negotiating, saying, yeah, I'm going to have Juicy Couture listed on my website, for example, which was a live example of one of the brands that we were speaking to. But then it's this case of like, right, okay, we need to somehow get their product into our world, basically. So in that case, you've got multiple options. You can buy it directly from the brand, you could affiliate link the stock, or you could drop ship, depending on whether that company will allow drop ship. But most of those companies, if you are creating a branded e-commerce website, will have like minimum order quantities. So then it's a factor of like your budgeting and how much money are you going to afford to spend on all of these brands. So what I was doing for this business was, one, selecting the brands that we were gonna pitch to, two, selecting the product that we were going to put on the website based on what that brand had available, and three, figuring out the budget, because like, how are we gonna, if this brand needs us to buy 500 units and this brand needs to buy 500 units, how much stock realistically should we be taking? Because sitting on inventory is a risk.
Yeah, exactly.
And then how much money is that actually going to cost me? So I was trying to factor in all of those things. And then obviously there was a whole separate conversation around like, how we're going to market this, how we're going to sell it, and how we're going to run ads to this platform, and all of the operational things that go behind it. But the main thing, I guess, that people came to me at that stage was product, because that had been my whole background. So how are we going to get product to sell?
Yeah. And for some, you're quite exemplary in the fact that you've got connections and you've got so much experience behind you. But for someone who might be starting a fashion brand, let's say if I were to start a fashion brand, and obviously I don't have those connections, I don't have the background, but I still want to pitch to people something that doesn't exist. What kind of things do you need? There's a real problem, with lots of business that are starting up. You don't want to go into it with your own money because you risk it all, and you kind of want to have like at least like an investor's kind of idea behind it, at least their advice behind it. But people are scared that if you go to an investor saying this is something that doesn't exist, they might just go, well, come back to me when it does. How do you kind of tackle that problem? What kind of things might you have to say or do to gain their trust?
I think if you are going to start an e-commerce business, you're going to have to be willing to put in a bit of your own money to start it. Okay. Because if you went to think about how crowded this marketplace is, like, you're going to have a really flipping strong, unique selling point to stand out in this crowded marketplace. An investor isn't just going to invest in any old business, and they're going to want to see that you have a very clear differentiation between what else is out there on the market, and also that you are willing to take some level of risk to make sure that your idea is like ahead of the rest of the market. So I personally feel like you do have to have some level of risk to be able to invest something into your business, whether that's into stock or even just build out like the minimum viable product of like your e-commerce or fashion brand. And then you could potentially go to investors, or I would suggest like getting money from crowdfunding, for example, like launching your business through a crowdfunder. I know a lot of people that did that, or having personal investors rather than like going to like investment companies, for example. I think that at that stage of business, they would expect you to prove your concept, especially in the e-commerce space, unless you have like a super, super, super strong unique selling point that nobody else is doing that, which is kind of rare at this point in the market.
Yeah, exactly. Because e-commerce was something that everyone says blew up about 10 years ago or something. So now obviously it's super saturated. And of course, there's still space to grow, but it's just that little bit harder, right? So that kind of entire process you had with that particular company where you like you said yourself, you started all the way from the beginning, and then you went through the entire like products, marketing, stock, inventory, calculations, everything. How long did that take?
So this is actually quite funny. That particular business came to me in June, and she was like, I want to launch in August. And I was like, do you know how that's not possible? Like, because if you think about like a luxury fashion brand in particular, they work on 6-month buying cycles. So if you want to get something in for Christmas, you need to be placing your orders in like April, May, for example, because they need to get that stock in place. So when in that specific circumstance, we did make it happen by August, but we were basically having to buy into their leftover inventory, so the stock that was already available, not new stock. So if you are setting up a fashion brand, for example, I would say like it's a minimum of 6 months to actually get it to a point where maybe you're like ready to start marketing it to launch, and then probably a further like 3 to 6 months to actually launch it.
Okay, and in those 6 months, you're kind of doing the equivalent of market research, I suppose. You're trying to, keeping, obviously because you're not making money, try to not quit your job, try to like have something that's making money on the side, but you're just trying to gauge the market, understand how it goes, and of course, if you need help, you can reach out to someone like like you yourself, who has that understanding and can maybe shorten that time frame down a considerable amount. So for you, obviously, as much as you're helping other people, this was a big change for yourself as well, coming from working in a company under an employer to then being your own boss, especially in the difficult time frame of COVID, which was difficult not only on a business side of the point, but then also on a personal side of the point. So what kind of things have you learned from running this just initially the e-commerce consultancy? What kind of things does that teach you that you hadn't learned before?
Yeah, I think I learned that I had no boundaries because I'd come out of a corporate environment that was conditioned to work a set amount of hours and say yes to doing things, and there were expectations on me, right? And then the expectation was on myself. So when I started working for clients, I found myself very quickly burning out because
Okay.
I didn't know how to say no to things, because in my head it was like expected that I should just do this because that's what I'd had to do my whole 11-year career in the fashion industry. So I really had to learn how to set boundaries and look after my own well-being first and treat myself as a client, because amongst working for clients and taking on all of the projects, it meant that my business development, my personal development was kind of on pause, and I didn't necessarily hold the boundary to say, well, Wednesdays is my day, my CEO day, for example. So I really had to learn how to set boundaries and put myself first, and also how to price myself. I really undervalued everything that I was doing in that first year, 18 months of my business, because again, I'd only ever been paid a salary.
Yeah.
So in my head, I was like, well, I got paid this much money at Burberry, so let me work that out what it is on a daily rate, and then let's do that. But if you think about it, I've worked my way up in that career for 11 years. The amount of knowledge that I had, I was building 5-year plans for a £308 million business. So it's not my time that you're buying, it's my value that I can bring to
Yeah.
your business. And that took me a really long time to work out that was how I had to price. So I probably lost a lot of money in that first year in business, I would say.
So just going on your first point, what kind of things do you say no to now that you didn't before?
Pretty much everything.
Okay.
Honestly, I think I've almost swung in the opposite direction, where I really am very, very strict with, if someone asks me something that's outside of the scope that I am being paid for, it's either you pay me more money, or we are probably gonna not do it, or we're gonna work it out on a different basis.
Yeah.
And in terms of my hours that I work, I'm super strict around when I take meetings. I only take meetings on 2 days a week. I really protect my boundaries, protect my calendar. If someone can't fit into that, unless it's a client that's obviously paying me, then I don't really accommodate for it. So I'm unless it's an opportunity that I really see that there's a lot of value in, I really do my best to protect myself over everything else. And then obviously with the pricing and things like that, I've kind of really done a lot of work on that side of things as well, with the boundary setting on that, and figuring out the type of person that I want to attract in, and the type of person that I want to work with that would be willing to pay those prices. Because I think if you undervalue yourself, you actually just naturally attract in people that aren't willing to pay you.
Yeah.
And then it becomes, what in my experience is, the people that pay the least are the biggest hassle. So I've really had to figure that out, exactly the type of person that I want to work with, and only say yes to working with those specific clients.
And that links with your point about the whole pricing yourself, right? Which can be a problem in itself. I do agree the people that you work for the cheapest, or for example, the people that you've allowed bargaining with, are the people that in the future are just going to create more of a problem, because you kind of became complacent initially. They're not going to expect you to then give them the hard boundary later on. And
Yeah.
we've all heard from, that one person where they've said that actually, you know what, I raised my prices and it sold out better, or I raised the prices and I got better customers, because you think it'll be the opposite, right?
Yeah.
So what was that process like for you, trying to figure out your pricing strategy, I suppose? Because, you're kind of initially starting off with just anything and anyone, I don't know what I'm doing, just come to me, I'll help you out.
Yeah.
And then you're slowly trying to whittle it down to, this is what I really want to do.
Yeah, I think I'm 5 years in now, and it is still a problem, honestly. I still have blocks sometimes around like my pricing, because I have a value that I want to be accessible to people. Like the support I believe everybody should have access to. So there's a really fine line between accessibility and then cheap, and then like giving like advice but then not being paid for the advice. So it's like I naturally by default want to help people, so I do give a lot of advice for free, but then I also need to make money. So I have to find this balance, and I think I'm still working on it, and I've had to do a lot of work on my mindset and my limiting beliefs around money to be able to get me to a point where I can say, right, I am worth, my time is worth this, or like my course is worth this. So I think I'm getting closer and closer to that, and I can see improvements in the way that I think around the pricing strategy. But it is still very hard. I think pricing yourself as a service or as a product, if it's because it's so close, it's about you. It's very personal, and it's very difficult to sometimes like figure it out.
And some people struggle with the whole element of do I deserve to charge myself this much? Like, am I really worth this much? And you kind of have to get over it initially, don't you? So what does your daily kind of daily time frame look like? You said you only do meetings 2 days a week. And so the rest of the days, is it all helping clients, or do you give yourself a rest day? How do you organize your week?
Yeah, well, I now live nomadically. So I currently live in Thailand, for example. So I actually spend a lot of time like focusing on me. And so like my mornings are just for myself. Like I don't work in the mornings here. I will very much like go on my beach walk, do my meditation, do a journaling session, go to yoga, do the gym, whatever I need to do in the morning. And then my brain honestly doesn't switch on until 11 a.m. anyway. So I kind of will like start around 11 a.m. I'll probably go to a co-working space or like a coffee shop and work with friends. And to be honest, outside of those meeting times, it's a lot of like me working on my business at the moment, because I'm kind of pivoting into this new world. I still haven't fully launched everything that I'm about to launch. So it's a lot of like thinking, right, well, what is my new content strategy? What is this new offer that I'm going to be launching? How much am I going to price this offer at? Like all of those things again, because when I've started to pivot my business, I'm realizing actually you kind of just start from scratch again. Obviously you have all of the learnings and the lessons, but it is very much a lot of like working on your business in your own time. And then I've structured the business now to work way better for the lifestyle that I want to live, which is way less like one-on-one time, way less me being in other people's businesses, and more kind of group settings, course creation, that kind of thing, where I can deliver the same advice to many people. So at the moment, the actual delivery of the work is the thing that takes up the least amount of my time because of the way that I've set up the business.
And staying up a business in itself can be kind of a stressful and lonely time period, because you've moved away from all the support you get in a company setting, to you just being exposed now and having to manage everything on your own. Exposed and then also at risk, because you could lose everything, right? So how did you manage that? I think people, when I've spoken to people before, when they kind of are, let's say 5-10 years in, they have they're not as exposed because they've now built up, a team around them, or they've built up a repertoire around them. But right at the beginning, when you're the most loneliest, how did you kind of cope through that period to make sure that doesn't kind of overtake your ambitions for the business?
I always got support, if I'm honest. Like I would always like if I felt like there was tasks, for example, that I didn't want to do, I would outsource them for sure. If I had the means to do it, I would outsource, because I very quickly realized that you can't do this all alone. And when I was in London, for example, I wasn't really surrounded by any other entrepreneurs. I wasn't really surrounded by people that really understood why I was doing what I was doing, or what I was doing. And that was really hard. So I had to find business communities that did understand it. So I can't even remember how I got connected with her, but like I connected with a girl called Claire. She did something very similar to what I did. So I think it's all about like finding people that understand, and setting yourself up with a network of people that really get what you're doing, or get the lifestyle that you want to create, or the goals that you have, because otherwise it can be a very lonely place and can feel like a lot of pressure. Whereas if you've got a community of people that really understand it, you can bounce ideas off of each other, create collaborations, like seek opportunities with each other. So that for me was very beneficial, specifically in that like first 18 months, I would say, is like building out a community of other people doing something similar to me. It made me not feel less alone and like less like the pressure was all on me. In terms of actually feeling like, oh, the success of this business was all on me, I think I just had to ignore that part, honestly, and just take the risk. Like I'm very much someone that goes deep dives into something before even really thinking about it. So to be honest, my thought process at that moment in time when I was starting didn't really go to an end result. It wasn't like, this is my goal and this is what I want to achieve. I just went in and went with the flow and to see how it feels. But that's not necessarily something that I would recommend, because that also can sometimes make you get a bit lost along the way. I think sometimes you having goals there's definitely something to be said for that, because it can keep you on a path, and if you're on a path, you're way more likely to like follow that path and get to where you want to be and make it as successful as you want to make it, basically.
That's true, because entrepreneurs are known to be kind of wanting to do everything on their own, right? And they also want to kind of chase every new lead, I'll say. But by lead, I don't mean like customer lead. I mean like anything that could improve their business. But something that can lead you down rabbit holes. You know, you could start setting up landing pages that you really don't need to be setting them up, or you could start creating products that don't really need to be created, because you feel like personally that's the next step you need to take naturally. Because obviously, when you're starting out, you don't know what the right direction is, so you go, I'll just choose every direction and see which one works. But obviously that's what leads to burnout and stress and that typical kind of like, you know, quitting early because nothing's working out anymore. So that's where I think, you know, joining those business communities, not only does it have that factor of social activity plus people that understand you plus people that you can share ideas with, but then also you can see that, you know, oh, that person is literally just 1 year ahead of me in this same business, or 2 years ahead of me, and what are they doing? And if you talk to them, they might be able to explain to you that, oh, what you're doing right here, change that up a little bit because I did the same thing, but it leads to nowhere. And that kind of advice you get, I'm sure you can kind of elaborate further, but that kind of advice you get helps you out a lot more compared to if you were just completely on your own trying to do it on your own, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like super important to have that network. It can be very powerful.
Yeah. So when currently what you're doing is like freelance currently, right? Is it still you very much kind of you're running it all on your own, or do you now have a team of people that are kind of running the show a little bit on the side as well?
I'm not really doing any freelance work anymore. I kind of moved away from that last year. I kind of made the decision that I don't want to work in other people's businesses anymore. Okay. I mean, I've been doing that, like I was doing it less and less and less, but I had like one client last year that was like lingering, and then I kind of cut it off because it didn't feel aligned with where I wanted the business to be. So no, now I'm mainly just doing mentoring, and I have online courses and a group program. So I did exactly what you said around like entrepreneurs want to do all of the leads and like jump on all of the things and like do all of the projects. That was classic me for 4 years of my business. What I realized is that when you try and do too many things, you actually achieve nothing. So not that I wasn't achieving nothing, like I was achieving something, but it wasn't where I actually wanted to be. So this past year, I've really said, look, I'm going to strip everything back and only focus my attention on the things that I want to do and the things that I enjoy doing, which is content, course creation, mentoring, and doing like group coaching sessions. So that's kind of what I'm working on now.
And how's that been for you? That kind of, it's not really been that much of a change up, is it? Because you were already kind of transitioning into it. But how's that different from what you were doing already? What kind of things have you had to relearn maybe?
Yeah, I think it was already kind of what I was doing, but I was doing less of it previously because I was also had like 40% of my time taken up by freelance projects, for example, so, or like consultancy projects. So I didn't have the capacity to work on the things like the online courses and things like that and really get them to where I wanted them to be. It's been a really interesting journey of setting up sales funnels for those, because it's slightly different and works slightly different in the way of than the consultancy projects, in which case you kind of can be found by people specifically looking for you. If you're offering like coaching, you kind of have to warm people up a lot more before they actually buy from you, rather than like thinking about like the skills that you've got that somebody could actually use in their business. So I think the sales process has been the biggest change for me.
Okay. And in your courses, what is it that you teach specifically?
Yeah, so I have a course. It's called the Freedom Model Method, and in that course, he basically takes you through how to figure out which online business to start based on the lifestyle goals that you want to achieve. So one of the reasons why I ended up pivoting my business is because I realized that me doing the freelance and the consulting projects wasn't allowing me the time back and the energy back that I wanted to invest in the mentoring or in myself. So that business wasn't working for the lifestyle that I wanted to achieve. So I'm really passionate about teaching people how to think about the lifestyle they want to live first, and then kind of working backwards from that to figure out what business model is going to suit that, but also suit their skill set and the passions that they have. And then once you figured that out as the first part of the course, it then goes in to teach you the 8 foundational elements of starting an online business, and then walks you through that process step by step, so that at the end of the 12-week course, you've essentially got the basic foundations of an online business ready to go and market to the world. So it's essentially people that are starting from scratch and want to work online in some way.
So it's teaching how to identify what's going to work for you to prevent that kind of stress that you get from trying everything, or even worse, starting off in the wrong business entirely. Because as you said correctly, if you start off, you can end up in this weird. I think I heard it somewhere, but it was kind of this weird kind of middle ground where you've achieved too much to quit, but not enough to feel free. So you're really in the middle, like, if I just work a little bit extra, I'll just get over the margin to feel free, but that never happens, and you end up spending years and years in this cycle, right? So it's about recognizing that ultimately entrepreneurs, or people that start a business, you do it for the freedom, and there's no point if you start the business but then you don't get the freedom that comes with it, because you've not really gone out to achieve that particular aim. So that's a very good point you've raised there. Not all aims in business is to make money. It's about living your life, finding your hobbies, and doing things you want to do. Like for you, traveling, doing your yoga, having those mornings that are just for you. That's kind of part of your aim, and I'm glad that's something you've been able to do. So where you are right now, Sophie, is there kind of, well, there will be, what kind of things do you want to do that will take you to that next step? Is there still things that you feel like you're missing and you want to still achieve them?
Definitely. I feel like I'm only really scratching the surface with this new business model that I've kind of pivoted into over the past 9 months, and there's so much more opportunity with that. I'm still kind of in a testing phase, which I'm sure will pivot it into so many different directions, but the good thing is I'm not starting from zero like I did 5 years ago. I'm kind of starting from a base level of knowledge that I've already experienced, and I very much learn through failure and learn by doing. So my ultimate goal is to have full financial freedom. I have an element of it right now, but I don't have full financial freedom because I feel like I haven't fully set up the sales model to run for me on automation, on pilot, for example. So that's kind of my goal right now, is to set up I am in the process of setting everything up to be pretty much automated, so that I can really just tap into the business a few hours a day, maintain everything, and it kind of sells for me in the background, and then I just show up and deliver. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment, is pivoting into setting up a really solid sales funnel that markets and sells for me pretty much on automation.
And setting up the sales funnels and sales strategies can be difficult in itself, because you don't know where you want to start, right? There's social media marketing, there's email marketing, there's newsletters, there's people start YouTube channels. Even in social media marketing, which one do you go for? Do you go for LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok? So there's so much to think about, and if you speak to anyone, their kind of default will be, just do market research, see what other people are doing. But that in itself can be a little bit, it can be easier said than done. So now that you're doing it right now, I thought I'd ask, what kind of things are you doing to kind of identify, again, to prevent you from going on to the wrong directions or the distracting directions? What are you doing to find out which marketing strategies will work and which sales funnels will work for you?
I have done the market research, and I have studied a lot of other mentors and coaches in the space, and not people at my level, people that are on the multi-million-pound level.
Okay.
So I've studied their systems and their processes, and I'm not saying that we should go and copy like multi-million pound coaches, because it doesn't always work for smaller businesses. But there is a certain style of model that they all follow, and I believe that that is a really solid funnel to kind of set up in any business that, in theory, if you target the right people with your ads, for example, is gonna work really well. And there's this whole trend at the moment, and I'm definitely part of this trend, is we don't want to market on social media anymore. We're sick of social media. Like it's so exhausting to have to show up there every single day and get very little result from putting all of this hours into creating content. For me personally, I'm playing a bit more of a long game at the moment, and I'm focusing more on like SEO driven strategies, podcasting, YouTube, for my organic content. And then I'm also utilizing paid ads at this point to try and increase and boost that to be a bit quicker for me. That then goes into a sales funnel that's already automated to take somebody through like a full customer journey before they're then ready to actually make a purchase with me.
Okay. And so you've already done the market research, which is good. How long did it take you to do that market research? What's the time frame that needed?
I think the end of last year, like the last 2 months of last year, because I was kind of going through this like, oh, shall I change this? Shall I not? Like, should I stick to e-commerce? Should I not? So I was just doing research at the same time as me kind of creating something new. And it meant that I hopped on a few like free masterclasses. I went on a few like YouTube deep dive in training sessions. I went on a few like sales calls to see what somebody would try and sell me and what their process was. So I was kind of getting like advice through speaking to people that were actually already doing that. So yeah, I was getting as much free advice as I possibly could, to be honest. And then if there were a couple of courses that I went on to deep dive into more of like the SEO strategies that I'm trying to implement, because that wasn't an area of my expertise that I could just go and confidently do that. But the sales funnel stuff, that was quite easy for me to identify the person that I could see was doing really well, and then kind of work backwards on that, go through their sales process basically, because going through somebody's sales process, it makes it very easy for you to then emulate in your own way for your business.
That's a good point you raised. It's not something I've considered before, but something that's it's nice to be brought up again. You don't always have to study them like as an observer. You don't always have to, if someone's using social media, of course you could kind of try and analyze their posts and kind of see how they're doing it. What's the, what kind of music are they putting on there? What kind of thing are they to draw your attention? But of course, one of the key ways to understand how they work is to just go into their system. So if they have a little landing page or they have a link that you click to join, just click it and literally just sit, because there's no obligation for you to join. You can go all the way to the purchasing stage and then pull out. But at least that way you can make notes of, okay, when I click this button, what page did it lead? Then when I did this, why did this form come up? Why are they doing it at certain stages? And of course, when you do it, 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 times, it'll all seem random. But then when you've done it maybe 20 times, you might start to see little different, patterns. You might see similarities and differences. And then that's when that's when the market research comes in, right? That's when you've understood what you can do yourself. I think they say in business that, try to be different. Don't try to do what everyone else does. But I think when you're starting off, at least try to do what everyone else does, so you're at the same level at least, and then try to be different. But there's no point being so different that you've done the same thing that people may have done in the past, but it failed, and you've just gone and done it again and failed. Yeah. So I've heard that from a couple of people where they say don't try to be so different that you end up failing. try to at least pass, I suppose.
Yeah, but there's also you can still be different. Your marketing message is still going to be different. It's just that why would you fix a system that isn't broken? If there's 10 people using this same system, why wouldn't you at least try that for yourself until it doesn't work for you, right? Yeah. I just think there's no point in you reinventing the wheel. Like if somebody's already found a system that works, like you don't have to copy the content that's in any of there, but like you can use the funnel. And I don't think anyone's reinventing the wheel with these sales funnels that are out there. Like it's common knowledge. So it's not like you're trying to copy the situation. It's literally just like you're doing something that's proven and people know it to work, but then it's your messaging, your unique selling point, the way that you show up and actually market it, the way you do your ads and things like that, and the way that you come in and sell your program or whatever it is, that is going to set you apart from the rest of the crowd.
That's good advice. Especially because you think about it, that when you are and you have used that initial sales funnel that other people use, only then will you have the experience and the confidence to then start tweaking it. As opposed to if you tweak it from the ground, you don't know what you're tweaking because you've never used it before. So, there's loads of advantages to, you could say semi-copying someone else's work, seeing how it works for you, and then trying to tweak it to make it even better and more efficient. That works specifically for you.
Yeah.
So, Sophie, kind of as we wrap up, what kind of, when you look back to when you started, 2020, you think back to, Sophie minus 5 years, starting off, just quit your job, which is a huge advancement. It's a huge decision that you have to take, especially considering your kind of accolades over those 11 years. What advice would you give yourself if you were looking forward in that confused state that someone usually is when they've just quit?
I think just believe in yourself that like whatever you want to happen is possible. I think I came onto this call obviously and I told you I didn't intend to start a business. Well, that was because I didn't believe that to be possible for myself. Like I didn't realize that I could start a business. I'd never even considered that to be an option for myself, because in my head I was just like, well, I'm a fashion buyer. Like I'm not going to start my own fashion brand. So like what else could I possibly do? And I really labeled myself. I put myself in a box. And although in other areas of my life, I definitely don't put myself in a box. I will go and explore and do all of the things outside of the box. In my career for a long time, I did. And I think if I could look back and even Sophie before that 5 years, because to be honest, I stayed in that career at least 4 years too long. I would say, do you know what, like believe in yourself, think about really like what do you want out of your life and figure out what you can do to make that happen for yourself. This isn't necessarily the only career that you have to follow. There's so many different options, and trust the process. Everything will work out in your favor as long as you have a very clear goal and strong enough why you want something. I think you'll do anything to make it happen.
Amazing. I mean, this has been such a good kind of talk, and you kind of explain your entire journey you've taken through, quitting to then realizing that, well, damn, I can't even travel, I can't even do anything, it's lockdown now. And then taking that leap into business, which I think, I'm sure you can kind of elaborate on a little bit, but I think going into business sometimes in some instances can be overhyped as the leap, which makes some people scared of even taking it, when actually all it is you just helping someone else out, or you just sharing your story, or you just writing a book and giving it out there. But because people put that term of business, you're an entrepreneur now, people think there's so much more responsibility on them, like the entire weight of the world is on their shoulders. So going into business and realizing that, sure, you might not want to start a fashion brand, but sure, you've got enough experience to help other people. You've got enough expertise and connections to assist people trying to start their own fashion brands, and then building that up, realizing over time that, as many entrepreneurs do, you've started a business, but it's not giving you that freedom that you need or that you wanted initially, that you kind of chased the entrepreneurial dream for, and then pivoting on it and realizing, why is this? It's because I'm doing too many one-to-one, I'm doing too many meetings, I'm overworking myself, I'm trying to do everything with my own hands, and then trying to kind of, iterate and whittle that down to then realizing, okay, I'm going to cut down my meetings, I'm going to give myself the mornings, I'm going to do my yoga, I'm going to do my beach walks, I'm going to eventually leave the freelancing completely and go into mentoring. All these little steps you've taken that, don't sound like much, but then when you in a summary put them all together, it suddenly makes sense that, oh yeah, this was all her trying to, cut down slowly but surely to then reach the actual aim, which is ultimately for everyone really, freedom to do what you want when you want. And currently you're traveling the world, nomadic lifestyle, and seeing the sights. What's new for you? Kind of, you're taking this further. apart from business, what kind of things in your own personal life do you have set your eyes on?
I think like this year for me is all about like finding stability, because in the past like 4 years I've been living nomadically. I've been moving around all over the place, and it gets exhausting after a while. I won't lie, like the novelty does wear off. And that's not to say that I don't love this lifestyle. I absolutely do. I would not switch it for the world, honestly. But it does mean that at some point your goals change, your life changes. I'm 4 years older than when I started. Like I want to naturally just slow down a little bit. And that means like looking like I'm trying to find a home base, which right now is here in Thailand. I'm actually going tomorrow to apply for a long-term visa.
Nice.
So it feels like I'm just like putting more like stable roots down a little bit more. That's not to say that I won't continue traveling. I definitely will, but I'll just do it a bit slower. And my priority right now is actually focusing on my business. I'm building community here. Like I started running community building events here where I do like co-working sessions with people. I've literally just come from that actually today, before I started speaking to you. And we have like 20 nomads come and work with us every Thursday at a cafe. So
Wow.
It's like a really nice side project that I'm working on, which is like build a community here on the island. It's all about like basically bringing back some of those like comforts that you have when you are living in one place, but more of surrounding myself with more like-minded people. The people here are super entrepreneurial, so it's like this whole week I've been in a constant think tank, honestly, like so many different little masterminds. So it's a really inspiring environment to kind of be in, and just more of that, basically looking for more connections, more inspiration.
Amazing. Well, it sounds amazing. You know, that nomadic lifestyle, it sounds like a dream. And in Thailand as well. I mean, what a country. I wish you all the luck. You sound like you're doing some amazing stuff. And you're imparting your knowledge to people that genuinely need it and you could change other people's lives. I'm just going back to that kind of reference side with that client you helped with their business, kind of narrow that 6-month starting boundary down to 2 months for them. They wanted it. You could have easily gone, sorry, that's impossible. 6 months is needed minimum. But you were like, you know what, let me use everything that I have in my repertoire to help you out here. And you could have changed her kind of game completely, because if she would have waited those 6 months without the advice she had from you, who knows where her brand might have been right now, or if she even started. Maybe after 4 months she's like, this is just too much, let's just quit. And it's that uncomfortable reality of realizing that sometimes for people it is difficult, and having someone like you, Sophie, to help them out can be all the difference they need. So well done on all you've done, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, and thanks so much for having me here.
Thank you for coming on. Speak soon.
Speak to you soon. Thank you.
All right, so how was that?
Yeah, really good. You're very good at active listening and coming back with questions. It's very good.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I didn't realize you were calling from Thailand. Your entire setup behind you makes it look like you were in some nice little London suburb somewhere. So yeah.
No, I'm actually in Thailand.
So what time is it in Thailand?
Like 20 to 6.
20 to 6. Okay, so it's only like it's only like 7 hours ahead, something like that. 5, 6, 7 hours.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
Okay,
yeah.
Not bad.
Where are you? You're in
UK.
You're in London? Or?
Leeds.
Yeah. Oh, Leeds. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
It's sunny enough now, right?
It is sunny, but I checked the weather forecast today. It's been sunny for the last 3 weeks, which is obviously, as you know yourself, an absolute bliss here, and you just don't get that. But I think next week it's meant to, the downpour's meant to start, the inevitable downpour. So.
Oh fuck. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. We're just gonna have to.
Hopefully not, for your sake.
We're just gonna have to bear through that one. But yeah, you shared some really good insights. I'm glad you were able to share everything you did. It was comfortable enough for you. Because I do try to make it as comfortable as possible, but obviously it's up to the guest to, open up as much as they can. And I'm glad you were able to follow along with my conversation. I hope I was able to cover everything. I might have missed some things, but I hope I was able to give things the breathing space they needed.
No, it's great.
And this episode, it's kind of, I think it'll be like 3 weeks or so before this comes out. Kind of the time frame we're working, 3-4 weeks, I think. But obviously I'll keep you updated whenever it comes out and stuff like that. But yeah, apart from that, do you have any?
Amazing. Do you do your own editing or?
Yeah, so currently I'm doing
Do you
my
do your
own.
own editing?
Yeah,
Or you
yeah.
have someone do it?
I do my own editing. The good thing with podcast is you don't have to do too much editing. As opposed to if you're doing a YouTube video, then there's just a lot more expectations.
Yeah.
But obviously a podcast lends itself to the content itself speaks for itself. You don't need the editing to do too much on top of that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's true.
apart from that, do you have any further questions before we kind of head off?
No, all good. That was great. Thanks so much.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on again, and I look forward to speaking soon. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening in. Hopefully you found Sophie's starting story interesting. If you want to learn more about who she is, what she does, and how she might be able to help you, then you can follow her on her Instagram at It's Sophie Biggerstaff, or also on her website www.itssophiebiggerstaff.com. She's also on LinkedIn and YouTube. Thank you so much for listening in to today's episode. I hope you got something out of it. If you did, please leave a comment down below. I look forward to speaking with you in our next episode. See you soon.